Hi, Paul. Hi, Turner. Hi, Dave. Everybody who has just joined us. Welcome to the Pioneers Schmooze-fest, just getting underway here. There's just a couple of things that I wanted to do as far as businessy stuff that I want to get out of the way. I'll just go ahead and let everybody who's on the call now know that the Pioneers Steering Committee has approved me being the chair for another 3-year term. So thank you very much to the steering committee. And the other really amazing announcement is of what our featured speaker situation is going to be this year, because it's a little different. Decided on the steering committee, we had a number of options for particular speakers. And then we also had an option for a tribute to a group of people, one of whom is with us right now, Turner, as well as Mary Whitten and Henry Fuchs. And Mary will probably be able to have Nick England on the phone with her if he doesn't actually attend in person. So we're going to have a panel situation of our featured speakers this year. And I think it's really, really exciting. I just want to say thank you to Turner and Henry and Mary for agreeing. And let's just give them a round of applause here. Okay. Tonight is just about everybody getting together. Rebecca, thank you so much for being on that AI panel. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun, and we definitely ran out of time because all the topics kept multiplying, and it's like, oh, you could go down a lot of rabbit holes with that for sure. It's an important topic and very much in the news and everything. And yeah, it's good to bring people together who have long memories of how these technologies got started. That's important context for sure.
I still think you should get an AI to be a participant, one of the speakers.
Get a what?
Get an AI to be one of the speakers.
There was an article today about, I think it was today or yesterday in the Times, about this guy who is the AI consultant to the Vatican. And they have an official AI consultant, evidently, who is a Franciscan friar. And it's his job to think about the ethics and interpret what's going on for the Vatican, I thought that was interesting.
I think I know who you're talking about. I think
Benedetti, I think his name is.
I think so. Yeah, you're right. I think so.
Yeah.
I did a talk recently about AI in the history of AI, and I loved your guys' talk. It was really like, I think that you guys touched on a few different things, but when I was speaking to others, like to the Oxford University's Philosophical Society, AI has been around for several decades, right? Like if you think of, like, for example, a good example, very simple to understand, like a Ford Mustang, right? It's a car, right? A Mustang's a horse, right?
Yeah.
And let's say it produces 425 horsepower, like any car does. A horse without a brain cannot produce power, right?
Right.
It has two eyes, like it has headlights, two side mirrors, like it has ears, and it has four tires, like it does legs, right? And so, we're taking anthropology and biology and applying this, understanding around it, right? Based off of natural intelligence. And the same thing as a digital calculator or an analog calculator, right? What's 372.16 times 825,000.019 minus 52.106, right? And you just type it into your calculator, right?
Yeah.
That's an artificial intelligence. It doesn't take away actually the job, but it can make it easier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different examples, like an alarm clock, right? Without an alarm clock, can you wake up at like 7:45 in the morning on command, right? And so it can be very assistive. It's when you think of like an artificial lung, is that an artificial intelligence too?
Yeah.
So it's like, getting into all of the nature of even like what a computer is. Like a computer originally was a occupation.
The discussion that was about the AI and so on, I wanted to share something that I heard, that's got to be about 35, 40 years ago. Let me see, maybe not quite that long. Anyway, I was taking a course, first intro to AI at Columbia. And first day the professor said, and it's always stuck with me, and I think it's still true, that thinking about artificial intelligence compared to human intelligence is like looking at a 747 and thinking it's a bird. It's bigger, it's faster, it's way more technology, but it's not really intelligent. It just looks, it acts like a bird, but it's not. And that's always stuck with me. And what I see going on now, just that brings it into focus for me, that perspective.
Although, you know, you kind of know what a bird's motives are, but what is an AI algorithm designed to do under the surface? You know, that's kind of another question.
Yeah.
You can turn an airplane off. One of the issues seems to be that we end up with AI and somehow you can't turn it off.
Well, the solution to that is not to turn it on.
The temptation is already too great.
It's there
Yeah,
already. You can't.
Yeah.
It,
Rev, your comment about the genie bottling plant was great. I think that was the biggest laugh of the night.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about how I'm working on this research project that involves, you know, asking people how they feel when they have companions, digital AI companions. And, you know, it's surprising how, as I said, I think I said this before, that all the people that you interview who are, some of them are programmers, some of them are tech people, but they will say, yeah, I know it's an algorithm, but they still get sucked in by it, right? They still get into a feeling of conversation. So the performance, you know, I'm working with Sherry Turkle on this, and the idea that the performance of empathy sort of sucks you into feeling that you have an empathetic situation, you know, that you're talking to something that has empathy. So that's kind of an interesting and, you know, in many people's opinion, pretty dangerous aspect of these.
It goes all the way back to Eliza, though, that it was utterly simple.
Exactly what I was about to say. I think that's a good metric, is to compare what things you're impressed with now that you couldn't suddenly say, oh, wait a second, Eliza did that same thing, versus no, it's doing something more than Eliza did.
Well, it's evidently doing a lot more than Eliza did if it can tell me good solutions for programming when I ask a chatbot.
I do have one disclosure to make. Although I have been working in graphics even longer, my PhD was in AI, and I worked in AI for several years until I got disgusted that it wouldn't let me build neural net VLSI hardware, and I just inverted my algorithm, called it a GPU, and moved into full-time into graphics. So I'm sort of a strange graphics person has a very strong AI background, but I've been doing had a bunch of demo work done the last 6 months, so I've sort of not been involved publicly in anything. So disclosure done.
Realistically, the problem with AI is not AI itself, it's the audience. It's the fact that the sheeple in the world that will sit there and they'll take everything as gospel, as opposed to actually questioning whether or not the things that they're seeing are real or correct. You know, even if, like we were talking about AI generated code, if you just, you know, said, okay, I'm just going to run this and I'm not even going to question whether or not the code is right, you're going to probably get into a lot of trouble. If you actually kind of look at it and try to figure it out, then at least you have a chance. Same thing with people who are using AI applications for very important critical decisions, whether it be legal issues or medical or anything else, and they don't stop to try to validate the information that they're getting. You know, that there's nothing wrong with the tool per se. It's how the tools are being used that's always going to be the biggest problem.
I mean, does it matter what field? So say you're talking about a creative field, say you're talking about all the image generation capabilities. Does that change how you can evaluate these things?
I think it depends, right? It's like, everybody's like, check out this thing that was generated. And I'm like, that's great. But in my job, the director is art directing, right? Somebody is art directing and saying, this is exactly what you want. So it's great if you say, hey, give me a cat in space. And it gives you a cat in space. And you're like, okay, I didn't really have a reason for that. The cat's not doing anything. But if you actually needed to do something precise, yeah, you might be faster just making that thing.
Or it might be like the code, it gets you in the ballpark, and from there
Yep.
you can work with it. It is true, I think, that an awful lot of what gets generated with AI image applications is kind of an instant surrealism, and it generally doesn't break out of that, or science fiction mode, or fantasy, or imitate your favorite illustrator. The things that to me seem interesting, I'm an artist, right? Are people who dig down into what AI does deep enough that they start to sort of turn it back on itself, so that the AI image becomes about the presence of the AI and what you can do with it, how it changes your perception of the world rather than what kind of illustration can I create. The conceptual work, in other words, where you get to reflect on AI using AI.
Yeah, there was a thought experiment by somebody recently about how, let's say you take the video game Sims, the little people or sheeple, as it were, and in the virtual space, and they actually start embedding AI in the Sims. And then so they start creating their own world within in a game, in a video game. So all of a sudden you're creating this entire world that thinks for itself, acts for itself through self-reinforced learning. And it just perpetuates this ecosystem that's self-sustaining of these virtual sheeple that are just doing this on a regular basis. So there's these interesting dynamics that are getting into the AI when it comes to open world environments within video games, and how that overall could potentially, like, we're playing God basically, and we're creating these like sentient beings in our own DVD, CD, live streaming games. But I'm going to be going to Capitol Hill next month to talk about innovation policy, because there's a concern as far as like deep fakes and things like that, and how that'll be used in more of a criminal type environment, and how people will utilize these very effective images and videos to perpetuate propaganda or what have you. But there's a lot of discourse about the efficacy of our current laws, how there are federal regulations right now impacting these things, and different innovation boards within government that are discussing like AI generated viruses, where they learn and they're able to maneuver in your systems in ways that you can't counteract, right? So it's creating these bounded rationality environments to where we're not getting too carried away and catching it before it's too late. There is a belief that you see what's going on geopolitically right now, that at some point we're going to have non-kinetic warfare, where essentially we're not having fights, literally like live combat kinetic warfare, but it's all virtual and cyber, where cybersecurity and everything like that is going to be important for entertainment and the preservation of entertainment, jobs, and what have you. But it's a few genies out of one bottle. It's not just a genie out of a bottle. It's a few genies out of one bottle. And, it's trying to navigate that direction, and try to find less disparity and finding ways to remediate or mediate our own individual sovereignties.
That's so funny. I just misheard you. I heard you say less despair per diem, which I thought was a great phrase. That's not what you said, right?
No, less disparity, less disparity. I think that we need to find parity or a dovetail between everything. People are scared, like with Mid-Journey and things like that, but there's other layers to it all, and I think that we're pushing along effectively, but life balances life out. It can't replace the creative person, because our capitalist society, if you have less people with jobs, you have the inability to get money from customers, which then makes your company not be able to make money, which then sinks your company. So there you have to create new business models that adopt to that for the sake of profitability. But the only way you stay profitable if people have jobs to give you the money to make a profit. So it's this vicious.
Unless everybody's a serf or an indentured servant, which is where we're going.
Right.
So then you have this whole subclass. You end up having a few super rich people in this big, large subclass that, has subsistence.
Yeah, it depends on an individual's milieu. I think that there's different tools, right? There's different tools to the trade, but if you also see it in development, software developers and things. They do these low code, no code solutions where it's just point and click. They get their engineering degrees. They claim innovation, and all it is a click of a button, right? It's marketed as innovation, at least, but it really isn't true hardcore R&D, which is another thing that I'm going to Congress about next month to talk about research funding.
So I think maybe we should change topics and save some of this stuff for the next panel on AI that's going to come up in a couple of months. I'd hate to use up not that we would, but maybe we can turn this from an AI symposium back into a Schmooze-fest.
Before we do veer off, I just want to throw out one thing. So one thing I'm thinking of doing for this SIGGRAPH is having a practitioners panel on AI in the workplace, and not necessarily using AI to create art, but maybe if people are using AI for coding or HR or anything else. So if any of you know of anybody that has experience with AI in the workplace or knows somebody that might be willing to help talk on the panel, just contact me offline and maybe we'll see if we can work something out.
Cool.
I'll message you, Pete.
Dedrick has his hand raised. Paul, you want to?
And on the topic of the Schmooze-fest and kind of the social thing, Ed had suggested over email that we might want to do a little toast at some point. And Ed and I both have something ready to go here. If you happen to have any sake or just a glass of water, or just want to raise quickly, maybe we'll give a minute for that. Looks like everybody is pretty well prepared to begin with. That's great. And I can just
Ramble coffee cup.
Yeah, and maybe I can just get my parting shot in on the AI thing.
2006 SIGGRAPH mug with all of the print worn off.
This is for okay. Well, it looks like people are relatively well prepared here. When I heard sake, of course, I thought, do I have one of these around here? And as you know, this is a Kawaguchi Sensei sake cup, which I guess that year he's actually writing people's names on it. So I even have that going. And I looked on the back here, and it's there. And I thought, okay, well, I think this is actually what they really fill it up with here. And unfortunately, it only came in 1.5 liter bottle. By the way, which I ordered online to have it arrive in time. This was $10.50 for 1.5 liters of sake. So that's.
But you get it on Temu?
I forget, not Temu. I'm scared that app at this point here. It's probably worse than TikTok. But in any case, Ed, thank you for putting this together. It's great to see everybody, and it's fantastic to have a chance to kind of celebrate in between the SIGGRAPHs. Some of the pioneers and the pioneering work, and get a chance to just socialize. It's great to see everybody. Cheers, folks.
Cheers.
Salute.
Cheers.
Kampai.
Cool. Oh, and I'll grab a little photo here of our group here. Cheers. I can get like 12 of us. Cheers. Yeah.
So does anybody recognize this?
Mhm.
Is that an
Recognizes this?
Absolutely, I remember that, yeah.
It was from SIGGRAPH 91 because the solution to the
I still
whole
have
thing
mine.
is SIGGRAPH 91. Cool. Okay. Wow, Matt Bouchard. Hey, dude.
I think we should toast to Mr. Kramer there becoming the fearless leader for another 3-year term. Thank you for doing that.
You're here.
Well, I'll drink to that.
Congrats, Ed.
Thank you.
And
And
for condolences.
yeah, no, I really enjoy this. I mean, there can be no greater group of people on the face of the planet. So, I mean, geez, what an honor and a privilege it is to be able to put stuff together and keep this group kind of going. So, I'll drink to that.
I guess we're a little bit easier to lead than student volunteers.
Yes. Just wish there was something I could do about this weird light coming in through my window. I'm going to have to fix that by the next time.
It's
Oh.
giving you a halo effect. I
I
think
I need to
that's
flag it
probably
off
okay.
there. Yeah.
You're not on the East Coast.
Now I can move back over this one.
He's in
It's been traveling across the screen, so there we go. Cool. Well, who's got a topic?
Well, I think it's still good to say a few more things about AI, because it's certainly a lot of what we can talk about in Hollywood. I think there were 2 jokes on the Oscars about AI. One of which is that I think like actors are all concerned they're going to get replaced with AI, but they came to an agreement on the strike, so they don't have to worry about that now. They just have to worry about being replaced with younger, more attractive actors, like they always had to worry. And then the other joke was on the writer's side of it. Jimmy Kimmel said, come on, could AI write Transformers Rise of the Machines? Actually, yes, AI could write Transformers Rise of the Machines. And I kind of agree with that. I think things that are just mashups and don't really have that much additional creativity and redigestions of stuff, it seems like AI is okay with that. I do wonder, given that it just keeps continuing to surprise us, like as a computer graphics person, you know, it's so much of what's been developed over the last 30, 40 years is kind of, there's another way to do it. There's the AI way to do it, to generate images, and the images look like they have shadows and shading and subsurface scattering and all of the things that we spend a lot of time figuring out the physics of. And it turns out if you send 10 billion images into a learning thing, you're trying to generalize and figure out what it needs to know about that. The new Sora stuff seems like it's independently invented something that's better than NeRFs and Gaussian splats combined to represent a dynamic scene that's 3D consistent as it goes through. And we don't even necessarily know what it came up with. I don't know if OpenAI even knows. They were surprised by the breakthrough, actually. Mm-hmm. So there's I think profound, like I agreed to be on the SIGGRAPH Papers Committee for the first time in a while, and was a little scared about just how many papers I'd have to review with AI in them. And actually, it was most of the papers are significantly leveraging diffusion models and autoencoders and all of that stuff, which is really good. It was like refreshing. Oh, I can review a paper that has no AI in it. Like that was kind of fun when I got to one of those. But that's changed, and I think that the worry that like the most evil thing an AI algorithm could do, being like it might make a movie on all its own, is not really the thing we need to be worried about. And it's some of the other stuff that we're all thinking about and that people have brought up that might be what we need to think about more.
Do you think that ACM is going to ever decide that we need a SIG AI?
They refuse so strongly. That's why a separate AI society was created when ACM refused to.
Oh, really? So that what was the basis for
Triple,
their
triple AI. I mean, that was the conference in the society, because ICHCAI was overseas every other year. And so we needed something in the US, and ACM refused. And this is like 1980, 81, because they wanted to control in some weird way. And they thought it would take away some control. And that's what got AAAI created.
Are you saying that something that happened in 1981 is still controlling what happens in 2024?
Yeah, because it's the major conference for AI in the United States, and it's not a part of ACM, because ACM was playing politics,
Wow.
and people still. I've not been involved in recent years, so I don't know whether or not there's been a coming together or whatever. But for years, it's like you published your papers in AAAI. You didn't have anything to do with ACM. Even IEEE created some AI societies to help because ACM refused to.
I've always thought that there might be one day a SIGVRT for virtual reality, but that just seems to have just gotten swallowed up inside of SIGGRAPH.
They had the same problem, that they didn't want it to get onto their SIGGRAPH cash cow. And so they refused to let there be a virtual reality conference. Once again, IEEE created one for virtual reality for a conference, and which is 2 dozen years ago. So I've forgotten exactly what that's mutated into, but I believe it's still in effect.
But things do change and people do change and committees change their composition, and might be worth a try again.
You know, it makes me think about when you say virtual reality, right? It then makes me think deductively artificial reality, which then makes me think artificial intelligence, right? You're in an environment where it might interact with you. You know, it's in video games, right?
Marion Kruger's
But
going to come
what
on
we
in
need
and
is
accompany you.
You know, it's been around before ChatGPT and Mid-Journey and all that stuff. Like,
it's artificial intelligence-based reality, AIR.
sure, we'll go with that, Ed.
One of the things that happened with VR is that it just branched out in so many directions. I mean, in SIGGRAPH, was it in 1993? The cave showed up, but now we're looking at headset VR, and we have AR and XR and all the different ways in which virtual worlds play into gaming and into virtual experiences. It's hard to know how you would put a dividing line on it in any case.
Well,
Back
having
in the
published
day,
a
you could-
paper on that in that year, and having brought in the virtual portal before the cave got any patents filed, it was interesting. We were both on the show floor at the same year, so that was nice. Yeah, there was a lot of that going on, but there's so many ways it went. I mean, I unfortunately was 12 months too late on the cash flow equation. The last 20 years, I've been working on AR contact lens display, where all the rendering, all the display was in the contact lens. And for a long time, people couldn't even believe you could see anything that was in the contact lens. The simplest optical. So that, to me, I thought would be the final solution. You know, and that would sort of be the end of talking about different sets of display devices, and you just get back into rendering. But because of the economy, if you weren't cash flow positive within 12 months from the middle of 2002, you were shut down. And that's what happened to, you know, pretty much all the 80% of the startups in the Valley. including my contact lens display.
Sounds pretty incredible that you could.
Yeah, we had it running.
Hmm.
But you need to, you have to, once you have something running, then the money really starts flowing as you have to
Right.
build up all the other volume and stuff. And you have the Apple stuff, which is great, but it's not designed to be able to come on down to a consumer price point. It just isn't. The technology is just not on that sort of glide path.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's still a helmet sort of design.
Yeah.
And I remember what Dan Sandin said way back when, sunglasses are cool, helmets aren't.
Well, I had people wouldn't even let me do sunglasses. That's why I had to do the contact lens.
Right.
So we'll see where all of this goes, but got to be careful on AI and AR. In that, you know, I mean, there's multiple things going on. You have the AI people, algorithms, in effect, are reinventing a lot of SIGGRAPH, right? They're reinventing a lot of the algorithms or alternate things that do the same stuff but in a different way. You know, that's one thing going on, and that's separate than what's, you know, happening with other areas where AI is affecting the SIGGRAPH community.
I just read today, AR has now been able to solve the Navier-Stokes equations and do whatever kinds of simulation it needs to do.
The biggest thing in the last 2 years is that a number of things have happened that experts were really, really impressed by. They just simply didn't believe it was going to happen this soon. And I can't be stressed enough because so many people keep thinking it's just more marketing propaganda. And it's not. I mean, the AI algorithms finally have enough scale, the large enough machines, to do things that was viewed as, you know, 30, 40 years off until just a few years ago.
That AI
I'm-
could come up with a completely new strategy for Go was pretty incredible, although
Yeah.
highly specialized.
Yeah, but that's the sort of thing that's been going on in general, is that AI hasn't just been solving some problems, it's been coming up with unique solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been doing things that if you had tried to publish it as a paper and just gave the title, as little as 3 or 4 years ago, you'd have been rejected just based on the title. That's the way I'm sort of saying how much it's changed.
Well,
Yeah.
could I suggest another topic that's kind of adjacent? And for a reason, I would tie them together. I think of cryptocurrency as kind of being the worry that we had before AI made us feel even more worried. One of the aspects of them both is that they're really energy intensive. And I was reading recently that they're actually responsible parties. Well, AI tends to have to be responsible because it's much more visible, but they're actually responsible parties in cryptocurrency who try to do mining in off hours or do mining in periods of low demand or through using alternative energy sources. So I wonder, where are we headed with the consumption of energy with both of these technologies?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about consumption, but crypto's definitely impacted the art community with NFTs, you know, and it plays its part with like big gaming companies and F1 racing. If you look at the blockchain technology itself and you look at the actual technology, not what crypto is,
Right.
sophisticated network and how it can play its part in human computer interaction, right? And the models associated to it. Since you have a decentralized network, there are now interactive games online associated directly to you staking crypto coins live within your like a browser while going through a video game, and you're making money off of it. And so, as far as energy consumption, there's been a concern about us needing more and more power. So there's this argument of getting self-sustaining, electric power grids or solar powered energy on our roofs and things like that. And then there's also been a discussion about potentially in the next 20 years where we go from EVs to hydrogen, because of the amount of electric needs and energy consumption we need from our current power grid. It's putting a massive drain on our systems. But the thing is when you've gone from Ethereum to Ethereum 2, it's also made it less energy hog, to say the least. Bitcoin is very energy non-efficient.
That's how they find it.
Yeah, that's where you'll find a lot of the main center of gravity consuming a lot of energy. But there's a lot of experimentation with all of these different coins. It's not just a crypto coin. It's associated to a certain network structure and schema associated to transactions, which is really unique. It's like, when you get like, I don't know, like it's like using essentially like, what's a good example? Like, let's say you had like Starbucks dollars, I don't know, or like a gift card, but in like coin term, you use that coin based off of that ecosystem or that blockchain environment. It's not just a coin. The thing is there's so much fertile ground right now because even though these are all crypto, there's not a lot of transactions you can actually make of a purchase of goods and services. It's very limited. So people are getting very experimental on not just the energy consumption, but how people will entertain themselves via crypto. That there's a lot of room to play because no one's claiming that territory. And at the same time, when it's so decentralized, how can you? So there's these organizations and certain foundations that are like, we'll sponsor this effort with like Ubisoft or CCP video games or F1 racing or Gap, for apparel, and so they're finding unique ways to adopt these models. While energy is a concern for sure, but yeah.
I
If I
can't
were
say
to,
it's
if I were to use solar power to fire up an array of GPUs doing AI, then I would use the AI to generate the realistic pictures we're talking about. This sounds suspiciously just like having the sun reflect off of real objects, and we could avoid the circuitry. And that sounds an awful lot like augmented reality to me. So maybe we are going in the right direction.
you're still buying inefficient solar panels. I can't say exactly what I'm doing in AI. What I can say is that all of it is involved in between 2 and 3 orders of magnitude less power per thought. That's the thing that sort of brings it all together, because my belief, at least, is that has to be the winner. I don't see how you're going to get. I mean, just work out on the dollars per hour of a robot worker. I mean, if the electricity budget alone for that robot worker is more than a human worker.
So this has to do with the ways that models have been requiring a lot less data to be functional.
No, this is me designing really efficient VLSI architectures.
Oh, okay.
Again, and algorithms with them. That's
So-
how the same thing that drove much more powerful rendering algorithms out of the same power budget. You can use to get
Okay.
much more powerful AI out of the same power budget.
Enjoy your
So
time.
it's probably not the most
Right.
scalable thing, but my wife and I were recently in Iceland and learned that the two up and coming industries in Iceland are data centers and smelting aluminum. Because
Volcano powered.
power is so cheap there that you can mine bauxite in Australia and put it on a boat, take it to Iceland, turn it into aluminum, put it on a boat, take it back to Australia, and it's cheaper than doing the same thing in Australia. It's crazy. Luckily, they've got lots of geothermal activity there that they can tap into. Not everyone has that, but it's certainly something. I don't know. I'm a big fan of nuclear fusion. It's much like VR and 3D stereoscopy. It rears its ugly head about every 20 or 30 years, and they say it's gonna show up in 20 or 30 years, and then you wait, and then they say, well, it's gonna show up in 20 or 30 years. Maybe one day it'll happen, and maybe we'll have cheap power because of that.
Another thing is if you think of cloud and things like that, is we're getting into petabytes and zettabytes of data. So, and we're powering infrastructures on a massive scale with a whole slew of data, right? Which is also feeding the AI machine, right? Because they use stochastic optimization to evaluate like large sums of data to determine, like these nice novel caveats of, oh, we didn't think about this before, or they recognize this unique pattern. But I mean, that's what it is too. And you see it in crypto also. Like if you think of a cryptographic hash or a Satoshi, right? They have to mine for a bit of it. And then after a certain amount of bits, it creates a crypto coin, right? So you're accumulating a lot of data, right? So if you can find ways to optimize data storage, especially when you think of cloud, it's everywhere, right? And so that's what's like fundamentally at the crux of a lot of that energy usage is just sloths and sloths of data being stored for all of our AI, all of our like personal credentials or data we're using in banking or whatever it is.
It's all part of the same thing. Geometry compression was one of the things I did there for power as much as anything else. And we're going to see the same thing happening in AI.
Isn't
Yes,
quantum computing kick in there also?
It's all data. They're using a lot of data. That's all. A lot of it is just based.
Since we keep talking about
That's
AI,
right.
I'm gonna bring it sort of back to SIGGRAPH. I'm planning to go to SIGGRAPH Asia in Tokyo in early December of this year, and managed to get some decent flights that have me in Japan for about 3 weeks. And so my thought was I was going to go to Kyoto or Osaka for a while after the conference and see some more. I've been to Tokyo many times, but I've never been sort of out of that area. I've been as far as Mount Fuji, but so I asked ChatGPT. I said, "Hey, I'm planning to stay in Osaka. Can you recommend some day trips from Osaka?" And it gave me like a list of 7 different places to go and things to see. And I said, do any of these places have interesting foods that are, in specific to that region? And it came back with a different food for each one. And it didn't add on the list Hiroshima, which I looked and saw is about an hour and a half train ride from Osaka. And I said, hey, how about Hiroshima? And it gave me a nice paragraph of cool things to do in Hiroshima as well. I said, it's a little bit further away, but it like suggested Kyoto and Nara and a whole bunch of places that are in the western side of the country, which I thought was, I mean, I could have dug that up on the internet using Google myself, but it would have taken a lot longer than the 2.3 seconds that it took for ChatGPT to tell it to me.
By the way, you brought up fusion energy,
I did.
and there's been a relatively new development in that arena, in that there's like about a dozen startup companies pursuing fusion energy now, and the most highly funded one is a spinoff from MIT. It's called Commonwealth Fusion Systems, and they've raised $1.8 billion in venture capital. So, it's one thing to say to Congress, yeah, it's still 20 years away, but now that there's money on the clock now, because the people putting up the money for these startup companies aren't going to be real happy when they come back and say, yeah, it's still 15 years away. So there may be some new developments in that area, which could be great.
I mean, one could hope.
Yeah.
Some of that is people just wanting to get in on what they hope happens.
Right. Well, it's potentially, a gigantic, it's not just a new company, it's a whole potential, reworking of an industry.
I'd be more impressed if the VC came from the mob, where they're going to break your kneecaps if you don't deliver.
But I didn't hear what these companies are doing that's new. That means they have a chance in heck of actually cracking the problem.
Yeah. Well, they're using higher powered magnets. They're betting on rare earth element magnets that can produce a stronger magnetic field in a smaller volume than the traditional, say, copper or even superconducting cool copper magnets.
Yeah, I know that there is thoughts that quantum computing will also preserve energy consumption and also produce as if it had high volume of energy resources needed. And so that's something that has been in development for several years. That doesn't really get discussed much, but from a quantum computing perspective, you have computational energy not being really needed as much, but also can produce like 10 times the amount of output than a normal computer system can. And then when you pack that on with AI, oh man, we're in trouble. It's going to be an interesting dynamic, right?
There's money for the fusion thing. Sounds like a bunch of people who missed out on NVIDIA and are afraid of missing out on another one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
FOMO is a very powerful force here. I wanted to bring up another subject. I've been thinking about doing a panel, like the one on generative AI and so on the early days of computer graphics in biology and medicine, namely the 60s and 70s. There was this huge effort on building systems to do molecular modeling for lots of different reasons. And there were some interesting things that came out of that. The whole idea of computers in biology and medicine is an interesting idea. I mean, who would have thought of that? The atomic bomb project sort of started this engineers and scientists working together on things where the science was up against something and the engineering could help figure out the science. So that's kind of what happened there. The system that I was involved with was used a lot for pedagogical work. The structure of those molecules is so important that serious theoretical study of the shapes and things like that are really important. So the one paper that I'm on was such an application. It was showing the insulin dimer and what the what aspects were part of the functioning of the molecule. So I made a list of some of the applications from those days, and there's several that I worked on, like the molecular modeling and analog computer simulations of things like the blood glucose insulin dose response curve, some other things. There's some bunch of applications that I know quite a bit about, like radiation treatment planning, clinical medical questionnaires, interactive data collection and analysis of experiments. And then there's some that I don't know much of anything about. I don't know anything about CT imaging other than my colleagues were falling off their chairs with excitement when the FFT came out. So I thought, oh, this is important. And another thing I've never really worked on is the pretty pictures of molecules, the space filling molecules, so on. It's just, for me, it had to be interactive to be interesting. And there was no way back in the 60s and 70s, you're going to have interactive manipulation of space filling molecules. So I'm looking for people who feel that they could represent one or more of those applications. Even the ones that I know quite a bit about could benefit from somebody that was actually involved in the applications. So if anybody wants to join me in such a panel, you can send me an email. It's a bob.ellis@siggraph.org. I think he'll get to me. I would really like to do this. There were some exciting times there. Just the using of computers in biology and medicine was a big thing. I mean, whoever thought about that? But it happened, and there's some really interesting origin stories about that I'm comfortable talking about. So, any particular comments? Any volunteers right now?
I could say that like when it comes to biology and science, like an artificial lung or an artificial heart could be considered an artificial intelligence. A prosthetic limb can be considered an artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah.
I think like when Bill Joel said in the whole Pioneers conversation about generative AI, where AI is a bad term to use, I think so too.
Machine learning.
I don't think AI is such a broad term and sometimes heavily stigmatic on the group you talk to, where everything that we use has some type of natural intelligence applied to something that is not natural, right? If you think of like human systems integration, right, where you're taking the human system, us as itself, and integrating them in an environment that's not human, it's everywhere around us, right? Like that there's no, it's even plays out like there's a book called Building a Second Brain by Diego Forte, where writing and documenting is like using an artificial intelligence by note-taking or just documenting. So does that mean a story by Shakespeare or a movie is an artificial intelligence of something that is what? Imaginative or otherworldly, right? Do kids aspire to be the next Luke Skywalker, right? They do, because that is something they aspire to be, but they're believing something that is artificial with a sense of maybe motivation, right? To be a superhero, but then they become a police officer or whatever it is, right? Or they take fencing class. I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like, I think that, at least hearing your guys' conversation about AI, like I think that if you're looking at it from a historical representation and where natural intelligence is divorced from our environment, we'd realize that light bulbs are an artificial intelligence of the sun. Like you know what I mean? Like what is AI? Like, let's really think about this. Like, stop calling it AI if you know it's not. Or maybe it is, accept it for fully what it is, and understand those things. Like you talk about algorithms. An Excel spreadsheet, you can put algorithms, right? Like, is that AI? Right? So, like, if you think about it in the totality and get into the granularity of reasoning, like a software application, if you create a user interface, you use conditional logic. If this, else if this. If P, then Q. If P, also Q. You're getting into reasoning, right? Computational reasoning. So it's like, like when you're using certain like layers in Photoshop, you're emulating what, a paintbrush? Is that an artificial representation of a paintbrush? Like, to what discretions? Where's the bounds in which AI doesn't exist or does exist? It doesn't, like, it's a fascinating discourse if you want to spend the time to reflect on history and really to respect what history is and what it represents. And you'd realize AI is such a horrible term for something that we find is so revolutionary and new, even though it's really kind of already been done in a whole lot of different facets, stylistic choices and nuance, you know what I mean? Like, anything could be. Like, without looking at your clock on your computer, what time is it? Without looking. And no cheating, right? That's an artificial intelligence, is it not? You know what I mean? Like, it's an Outlook calendar. If you have a meeting at like 3:30, you're not going to know naturally unless it tells you. You get that 15-minute notification. Oh, it's your meeting is about to start, right? Or whatever it is. Like, to what discretion do we need to have, or the lack thereof, to really say we've already been incorporating it in our everyday life?
I think that's a really interesting point, but maybe the term is distributed intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, right? We've been distributing our intelligence throughout our technology. I'm always much smarter in my own house than I am out in the wilderness because I have everything around me to remind me of what I ought to do and make use of. And similarly, we've created this vast network of functionality, a lot of it now on computers. So I sometimes wonder if the artificial intelligence, or at least the generalized intelligence, isn't in some sense already there. It's just ourselves extended out into our built environment.
Right. It's the same thing with, like, I use the term, like, instead of like distributed, either distributed or collective intelligence.
Yeah.
Right. Like, is an umbrella like a form of a tree, right? To give you shade, or not have water hit you on your head, right? Like, to what discretion? Did someone originally throw an apple before it became a baseball? You know what I mean? Like, how are we referring what is natural versus what is artificial? And to what extent are we actually applying it already or not, right? It's thought-provoking when you think about it, because we're saying, oh, AI is this. Well, it could be a lot of different things. It really can. Like, I don't know what else to say. I mean, that's just how I feel, right? Not trying to deny anyone's, opinions, but I mean, I've chewed on it for a while, really thinking about that. And like, why do we feel so disconnected from AI so badly, when there's these instances where I feel maybe like that line is blurred, or maybe we're just not using the words that we're incorporating now? Like, it's maybe just a trendy word or phrase, AI, or something so much more. It could be so much more if we're willing to accept and embrace what we've already done. I think that there's no, disservice towards our past, and understanding our history, and understanding that there is some intelligence that we have incorporated in our tools or everyday things that is artificial, and yet it still has intelligence.
Well, one of the problems is every time I talk about computers in a conversation with plain ordinary people, it eventually ends up talking about AI. I mean, I'm getting tired of it. You know, I find that it's been said. You know, enough has been said. I don't know. I don't see a disaster looming because I think people are smart enough not to do stupid things. Maybe so.
At the risk of claiming that I'm younger than you, how am I younger than you, but so much more cynical than you are? I think people are perfectly capable of shooting themselves in the foot. So, yeah, we'll see how it all turns out, but fingers crossed. I agree.
Well, you know, Bitcoin and other things have proven that you can fool some of the people all the time. I mean, there's great possibilities there, but the way it's been implemented, the way it's been used is totally awful.
Is that thing called Channel One still out there? That was an attempt to create an entirely AI generated avatar telling you the news. And did you ever see that go by?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It was a news station called, I think it's called Channel One, and it had, you know, avatar characters, very, very, very realistic, telling you the news stories of the day, but you could switch to have them speaking many different languages, the same thing. And also if they showed a video of somebody, yeah, and they were interviewing somebody, and so what started the fire or whatever, they could have that switch to a different language, and lips, you know, the lips would be tracked to that person's face, which is really amazing, because I mean that's really blurring the line between, you know, things we're used to accepting as having some veracity, and things that we're used to not having any. So I think that's one of the dangers, you know, that the blurring of the lines, not so much people doing something stupid, but people doing things that sort of acclimatize people to accept, you know, things as truthful when they're not, maybe.
Well, I think one thing that's changed is it used to be if you wanted to make something fake, cost a lot of money and took a lot of time. Now it's cheap and easy, and anybody can do it. It's, you know, available at many levels of society. So on one hand, that's kind of good because democratic, but on the other hand, you know, like particularly in my field, which is visual effects, you know, people have spent a lot of time learning in a group of people who have a certain ethics that, you know, we share together. I'm not saying everybody's perfect or anything like that. Just, you know, people are professionals, and versus, you know, somebody who's maybe 12 who thought it was a great idea because they were 12. But, you know, other people not knowing that they're 12 might believe it because, you know, not saying that couldn't happen now via other methods, but it just makes it cheaper and easier.
Yeah, I remember like when the word that whole buzzword uncanny valley came out, right? When it looked so real, oh no, it's gonna take everyone. This is like this artificial representation of like super realistic, like or actresses, whatever it is, right? And now we're all about high performance graphics. You know, it's an interesting dynamic, you know, and when you say like make it fake, right? And now it's interesting, you know, studying ethics from a philosophical perspective. It's non-binary. You know, it's not yes or no, pass or fail, true or false, right or wrong, but you know, it's a system of views. You know, it's all considerate to the environment and norms, but also what is considered acceptable, socially acceptable or not. And so, you know, we have legals and that's law, but the ethics within those laws are, you know, exercised differently that aren't really breaking the rules. But I think it's interesting that we're talking about ethics when we do have laws, right? And we're saying make it fake, which is
Laws don't have to be ethical, though. That's one of the problems with that.
it can be lawful, but is it ethical, right?
No,
And
I
think
mean, I'm saying laws don't have to be ethical. They do not.
right, and I think that's a fair point too. You know, it's that interesting dynamic there.
Yeah.
Policy is very important.
So on the massive experience in industry, I saw what I thought was an interesting point a couple of days ago, that there are concerns about the game industry in particular, where content creation, in that is the junior artists who are being replaced by AI systems, because it's the less experienced and less detailed models that are being first replaced. But that means that the people who would otherwise be being trained up to gain more experience are not getting hired and not getting jobs. So where I'm not, in the short term at least, worried about losing my own job through AI, I'm a bit worried about the chain of people following us. And I don't know what the solution to that is, whether we train people up differently or whether we need to train the AIs up such that they do get to the stage where they can be replacements for everybody in the industry.
Well,
so maybe not so many people coming into the industry anymore, right? You don't get that diversity, maybe.
Well, you know, like I was saying before when we were talking about it, is due to a capitalistic society and the way our economy is structured. If you don't have a job, you aren't able to spend money. If you're unable to spend money, they have no way of making money. If they have no way of making money, they can't profit. If they can't profit, they're going to go bankrupt. So at a certain point, life balances life out. If no one's able to get a job, society will bankrupt itself. Right? Even over time, let's say they have tons of money, they're going to still have to pay their taxes, right? They're going to still have to pay whatever fees they have to pay. You know, their leases to their office spaces, or maybe they don't, right? Or their equipment or their servers or the energy hogging that they're doing, right? I mean, it's gonna have it's inevitable. Like you can't, unless you change the fiat currency system, you know, you're not going to be able to not have people work. Like our financial system won't allow it to happen, because that's how corporations survive and thrive, is through other people having jobs. You know, this is just it's an infinite game. If we're applying game theory, you can't just displace somebody's job, because
They'll make you do something else, right?
Yeah,
that might make you do something.
And somewhere else, maybe not in the US, or not. Like I struggle with this because I'm a native born Californian. I grew up here. And, I see that it is much harder to live here. Like, I can't have the same standard of living that my parents had. It's not a thing. And that's true of my friends as well. So it just means that the money's moved somewhere else.
Yeah, I think what's crazy, at some point though, when they start letting people go, right? If they're doing it because of AI, they're going to lose business before they lose everyone. Right? Because you're impacting people's life. Plus, if you think of laws, right? Whether it's, some laws are not always ethical, but if you think of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and labor laws, they can't just, society as a whole can't do that legally under the Department of Labor, right? If you displace everyone, then you're violating the laws, right?
but there's different layers to this. It used to be like 90% of everybody was a farmer once we invented agriculture. But as society's gotten more and more advanced, the percentage of people that needed to be farmers in order to produce all the food needed just kept going down and down and down. In fact, it's only as high as it is because of the number of artificial laws actually disallowed automation for a while in parts of farming. So in some areas, that's just going to happen. I mean, there's no more buggy whips, okay, companies. I mean, it just happens. It's only when you're talking about all jobs that you have to hope that maybe the AIs are producing enough goods and services that the rest of us don't have to work.
Well, there are always new jobs that open up. I mean, you can always be an influencer, or you can, I hear people make money off of that, or you can be a professional e-gamer. I mean, there are already tournaments, and some of the traditional things have become e-games.
But
I'd like to be an e-gamer, professional e-gamer in the senior division. Thank you. I'm waiting until I retire so I can do that. David, I'm putting you on
You need a
notice.
lot of practice.
I know, but I mean, that's why I don't game.
Yeah.
But you need to add up the numbers and see whether or not the new ones coming in are anywhere near the numbers. Historically, a lot of the doom and gloom about, oh, the jobs are all going away. In fact, the new technology generated more jobs on average, not less.
But they were different.
They're different, but buggy whips were different. Sorry.
Yeah, but what's happening is that you've got technology is evolving a lot faster as we continue going on. New technologies come in, replacing older technologies, and yes, we need people to to work with the new technologies. That is true, but it's a matter of education. That the people, if you go back, you said, you know, we used to be a country where agriculture was the major industry that we had, which was true. And then we had the Industrial Revolution. Well, the Industrial Revolution was not like 5 years, 10 years. It probably was more like about 20 or 30 years for it to really take hold. So you're talking about at least an entire generation, maybe two, before it made its true impact. Can we say the same thing about computer technology? No, computer technology took hold a lot faster than that. And the newer technologies that are computer-based, they're coming in much more quicker, and people aren't
debated for 30 years whether or not word processors actually had any added value.
I know.
That long before people agreed that actually they were an advantage rather than a distraction.
Well, you're talking about the issue of the difference between when a technology becomes mature or when it becomes generally accepted. And that's something I've taught in my classes, God. And trying to get the point across that not every technology ever gets to the appropriate level of acceptance. It doesn't mean it's not used, but it's not maybe globally used. And I agree with word processing. Well, word processing was also fighting against people who were trained on other technology, and now they had to learn new technology. I still have a memory of when I first got into industry, the department I work with, they had just gotten a Wang word processor. Okay.
I have used a Wang word processor.
And since
Hey,
I was the tech guy in the department, my job was to help train the administrative staff to use it. And I still to this day have this image of one of the older women in the department who was an absolute wizard at typing on like electric typewriters. And you could put something in front of her and she was like, and then I had to help teach her word processing. So it was like, click, click. The minute she had to use one of the extra keys on the keyboard, her speed of typing regressed back to the speed it was when she first learned how to type. It was absolutely bizarre, but she got to it. She eventually, integrated it in. But we're getting newer technologies. They're coming really, really fast. And I'm saying is what's happening is people need to be re-educated. But also I think people need to accept the fact that what your job you have today may not exist in 5 to 10 years.
Hey, it's interesting when you talk about word processor. If you spell something wrong, it's smart enough to tell you spelled it wrong. Is
Well,
that
so,
it?
but it doesn't always tell you what
It's-
the options it
Spell
gives
check
you
is
aren't
AI.
always the best options.
I
Spell
don't
check.
think Wang did that anyway, did it?
What?
I don't think Wang did spell
No,
checking.
Wang didn't have that.
Did not.
Wang was just, I mean, the Wang
You had to
system was,
enter a code for bold.
it was crude. It was a crude word processor.
Wang was basically from the cash flow of the Wang core memory patent that IBM couldn't break, and so they just had to shovel a lot of money to his company. That's not the same thing as a business.
Am I right
but-
in remembering that Wang was one of the first ones to have sort of what was called store and forward messaging?
Yep.
Yeah. Precursor to
20
email.
years ago, my job was building optimized wafer scale computers for doing neural network AI. And I was told that it was too early. It's 40 years ago. And I may finally get a job in that, now. So it's all relative.
Yeah.
It is. It really is. But to the word processing, Microsoft Word perspective and spell check, I think there's this interesting caveat there, right? Because I used to read the dictionary. I love, for some reason, I just love reading words. This is like my pastime, right? And there's things in Microsoft Word that aren't registered as real words in Microsoft Word. Like, you can find words in the dictionary that Microsoft Word will want you to correct because it doesn't recognize it. But they don't know what to say the correction needs to be because it simply doesn't know.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that there's this interesting caveat when it comes to using a tool versus mastery over your craft. Right. And I think that there's this big trough that we're in, to where we're becoming so dependent, or like you have like these junior artists that can't do it as well as others, right? But the mastery there isn't there, and it will never be there because you don't understand the art to it all, or the true like understanding behind it, right? It's like sometimes when you think of good acting, right, it's not just always the words, it's the pregnant pauses, it's the pauses in between the words, right? It's having that sophistication and understanding and putting in your 10,000 hours. But I think that understanding that differentiation is vital towards further development of these current technologies that are AI supported or AI driven. But I also think that at some point there's going to be this intersection and this impasse to where
Can we do one
like
thing?
the only real practitioners in certain areas are just going to be R&D labs.
Yeah, Matthew, you said before you were quoting me how I said AI was just a poor term.
It is.
It's a poor term because in today's environment, it's being used for a plethora of different types of applications, and like
not expertise.
Well, there's what's the old expression? Too many choices is no choice at all. Too many definitions of it is no definition at all. It covers too much. So we're talking about, let's try to be more specific, okay? You could talk about generative systems. You could talk about expert systems, which are based on more logics, if then else's. Talk about the specific applications and the names we give those kind of applications that relate to their use. I mean, I pulled up and I threw it in the chat. I was just curious. The definition of AI according to Wikipedia, and basically, according to them, any computer program, if you read the definition correctly, any computer program could be considered artificial intelligence. Any program, even a program that did 2 + 2 is 4. That's artificial intelligence because the computation was done not by a human. Therefore, it's artificial. So it's a really broad term. So in our discussions, could we narrow down, use other terms instead of these buzzwords?
Well, right, because then there's mastery and expertise that is being developed in that area of AI, right?
Well, what do you mean by AI? Do you mean generative AI? Do you mean expert systems? No, I'm serious.
Well, I'll say in that stylistic choice, right? Like, I think that in order to hone that craft, you actually have to be conscientious of how
What craft are you talking about?
whatever tool you're developing.
Well, be specific. Give an example.
Or expert, right? Either one, any of the above.
Well,
All of
let's
the
put it this way. Expert systems have been used in the medical field for decades.
Oh, absolutely.
And they've been used to narrow down the possibilities of what a given set of symptoms are. But they're based on the logic that was input from actual doctors. So they are basically just doing statistics to say, statistically, it's probably, if you have these symptoms, statistic chances, there's a 95% chance it's this, there's a 92% chance it's this. It's all statistics. But the doctor can say, no, I don't agree. Why? Because our brains, even with the most sophisticated systems we have today, our minds can still process in a manner that we can make what we call educated guesses, leaps of faith, intuitive guesses, which are, and we can come up with solutions that that the generative systems we have today or the expert systems, they can't.
Do you know where the term expert system came from?
From an expert?
It came because at Bell Labs, there was an edict by senior management, we do not do AI, not allowed to do AI. But so much of the world was doing that. This is back in the 1980s, hype positive cycle of AI. They needed to do it. And so they came up with the word expert system so management wouldn't fire them. That's where it came from. The algorithms are just AI. Sorry.
Yeah, but it still is a more specific suite of applications, suite of programs. I would not call generative systems we have today expert systems, because the basis of the computations in a generative system today, like ChatGPT, is different from what was used for expert systems.
Well, 30 years later, things change, but ChatGPT is using some algorithms that were not computationally executable. We didn't have the hardware for them, nor did we quite have the algorithms even. So pretty much all the stuff that used to be done with the expert system now can trivially be done with ChatGPT. If it hasn't for a particular area, that's just a matter of time. So I'm intentionally refuting your point about expert systems meaning anything other than a buzzword at Bell Labs.
You know what's interesting about ChatGPT and natural language processing. Sometimes, in the natural intelligence aspects, neuro-linguistic programming, NLP with NLP, right? Is you're talking about the dictionary, right? And I was talking about it too. Is Oxford Dictionary, which is the first dictionary, known dictionary, right? If you read the preface, it says the dictionary is a historical representation of past historical uses. How we use it today is the most accurate term of its use. So if we as a group right now are saying AI is a bad term and that's not an accurate representation, we're actually properly terming what AI is and what it should be by the Oxford Dictionary. So it needs to change, or it already has by this conversation, right? By definition in itself. The dictionary is all history.
Well,
right?
Dictionaries are descriptive, not instructive.
Right.
They're strictly descriptive. They describe what has been up till now.
But like what you're not even encyclopedias.
What? Same as encyclopedias.
Encyclopedia is different than a dictionary.
But you know what I mean? It's one of those things to where you're talking about creative thinking or lateral thinking or being able to recognize something there, right? And then we change the definitions or be redefining, right? Or we use a retronym or an eponym or a
the last 3 years, generations of AI systems are totally different in the history of mankind. We're not talking about, changing a few words here and there. They really are doing something different.
Right, right. But at the same time, the definition for it is not necessarily what the definition is understood as right now. And
yes, and that's why the people that are actually doing the work are at such odds with the hype in the media and everyone else, because they're actually saying it's more scary than you're publishing about, not less.
Yeah.
It's the same like what Bill's saying, right? Like AI is a horrible term.
Yeah, but whatever you
said that.
call it.
Thousand.
Why don't we call it Fred?
Fred. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm in if you're in.
Max Headroom, I think, was a better.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Because that was channel 43, and it was a rendered newscaster. What's your background, Max? Oh, alternating yellow and black stripes. As a graphics, sir.
Yep.
Maybe
Network,
that's
Network 23. It was Network 23.
Network 23. Okay.
So we're now at our hour-and-a-half mark. Do we want to call a timeout, or do we want to keep going here? Has everybody had enough schmoozing, or you want to keep the conversation going?
I think we should cut it for tonight. But,
Yeah,
but I
sorry.
think it might be a good idea to have a schmooze like this every couple of months.
What do you guys think? Is that a thumbs up?
Let's do it.
All right, so we
Definitely.
will plan more than just one schmooze per
A
year.
year.
And Bill, you're on the steering committee, so we'll discuss it. And by the way, anybody who wants to be on the steering committee, I'm happy to have anybody else be on the steering committee. All it means is we have a meeting every second Wednesday of the month, and you can just join, and we talk about what we want to do with the Pioneers group over the next few months at every meeting. So anybody who wants to, just let me know, and I'll just put you on the list and send you the invites to the meetings. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to officially close the meeting, and I appreciate everybody logging on, and great to see old friends.
And hopefully we'll see a lot of you in Denver.